Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Camarillo Planning Commission, this regular meeting on this day, Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. If the Secretary would take the roll, please.
Commissioner Talmadge.
Here.
Commissioner Murphy.
Here.
Vice Chair Vandermeulen. Here. And Chairman Espinoza.
Here. Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Edsel absent today. And if we would have Vice Chair Vandermeer, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Will you please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you for that. We will move on to the consent calendar, which is the minutes of our last meeting. If we recall, that was a short meeting, which was a one-item, single-item receive and file for the general plan update. Do I have a motion for approval?
So move. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Talmadge, seconded by Vice Chair Vandermeulen. So everyone vote. Pass unanimously. Okay, at this point, we are going to open up the public comment period. This is for any item that is not on tonight's agenda. Any member of the public is welcome to come before the Planning Commission to the podium to bring up any issue that's not on tonight's agenda. And do I have any? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period and move on to our public hearing. We have two items on tonight's public hearing agenda. And the first item will be CUP 414, Roxy Stadium 11, adopt resolution approving CUP 414 on the sale of beer and wine in the movie theater. And may I have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, our new assistant planner, Mitchell Morrison, will be giving the presentation tonight.
Okay.
Chairman Espinoza and fellow commissioners, this evening we'll be considering CUP 414 for Roxy Stadium 11 for on-sale beer and wine. The project is located at 5001 Verdugo Way. Here's a map showing the streets surrounding the project site. You have Verdugo Way to the south, Camino Ruiz to the east, Adolfo Road to the north, and Santa Rosa Road to the west. The existing movie theater is in walking distance of existing multifamily residential to the north, professional office uses to the east, and existing retail and commercial uses to the south. So the request this evening from the applicant, Roxy Stadium 11, is to have approval of a CUP to allow for the sale of beer and wine. Sales would be from a separate concession area for on-site consumption within the existing movie theater. Here's a photo of the existing site. This is what it looks like when you walk up to Roxy Stadium 11 facing west. And here is a photo of the designated concession area. Now, this is a portion of the existing concession in the movie theater lobby that would be converted into an area for the sale of beer and wine. And this is entirely within the existing movie theater, so it would be the physical conversion of this would be processed as a tenant improvement in the existing space. Here's an example of one of Santa Rosa Cinema's existing concession areas where they sell beer and wine. This is at their Santa Rosa location up in Sonoma County, north of the Bay Area. And you can see that beer and wine are sold from this drinks area. So some background here, the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control received a Type 41 license application from the applicant. And this was pre-COVID, so staff has been working over the years with the applicant diligently to revise the municipal code, and that's the third bullet there. In 2021, the city council passed an ordinance amending the code, adding a new section in the CPD zone for alcoholic beverages on sale for theaters, and that requires a CUP. So the ABC license is pending, and the CUP ensures that the sale of beer and wine is appropriately located, limited by a security plan, and it gives the city the ability to verify that the theater operates in accordance with the conditions. Here's a floor plan. There are the 11 movie theaters surrounding the existing theater area. Here's a yellow box showing the portion of the concession that would be designated for the sale of beer and wine. There are 11 movie theaters surrounding that. Here is a floor plan that zooms up on the existing lobby showing that beer and wine will be served from here. The entrance is from the south, and then the designated concession area is a portion of the existing concession that would be converted for the sale of beer and wine. So regarding the ABC license, the type of license is actually a Type 41, that's on sale beer and wine. Under a CUP, the sales would be limited to beer and wine. The Roxy's movie theater currently maintains a concession that has full food service there. They offer premium food items. And ABC has conditions for the sale of beer and wine in movie theaters. We attached those to your agenda report for reference, but the recommended conditions on the CUP either meet those standard ABC conditions or are more restrictive. An example of that is that the security and operations plan limits each customer to no more than 3 servings of beer or wine to the movie theater. So this slide is on the security and operations plan. To purchase beer or wine, each guest must be present physically at the designated concession area. They must show their ID, a movie ticket, and they must not be obviously intoxicated. The theater has to track the quantity of purchases, ticket information, and the theater number on a tracking sheet that's similar to the ones they use at their other theaters in California. Roxy Theater must also monitor the theater in 30-minute increments to make sure that beer and wine is consumed in the seat of a purchaser. So the community development director and the police department must review and approve the security plan prior to issuance of the ABC license. Staff and the police department has already reviewed the operation and security plan and conditioned the project to operate in accordance with the conditions of approval. In terms of environmental review, staff reviewed the application in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, the state's guidelines, and the city's environmental guidelines. It was determined to be exempt through Class 1 categorical exemption for existing facilities. And what that is for projects that consist of the operation, permitting, or leasing of existing buildings that involves no negligible expansion of the existing or former use. So staff recommends approval of CUP 414, subject to the conditions of approval. And the action of the Planning Commission is final unless an appeal is filed within 10 days of the date of your action. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, well done. Thank you for that. So I want to open up to any questions that our commissioners may have for staff at this time.
Yes, I have a couple of questions.
Commissioner Talmadge.
With regard to the concession area, I noticed that it's at the end of the existing concession area. And is there a physical barrier, a doorway or gate or something that separates the alcohol sales from the regular concession area? Or do we have the person that's serving popcorn suddenly run over and serve beer?
There's not currently a gate, so to speak, but there is a condition in it's condition 23, or 20, I'm sorry, rather, that states that the sale must be from a dedicated portion of the concession area, and that the designated portion of the concession area must maintain its own cash register and a separate line. That's the way condition 20 currently reads. That there's not a physical barrier, but the concession where beer and wine would be sold would be physically sectioned off from the existing concession.
Does the applicant have any plan for a person of 21 years of age or older to be stationed full-time for the sale of beer and wine? Or does that individual float around?
My understanding from talking this through with the applicant is that they maintain a staff member that is 21 years or over to serve beer or wine from the concession. And at no point does a customer ordering beer or wine, at no point is a customer ordering beer or wine being served by a staff member that is under 21. The California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control has a training program on responsible beverage service, and that's a requirement that is state law, so that the staff that are serving the beer and wine have undergone what's called responsible beverage service, RBS, training, and that's a requirement of staff that are serving beer or wine.
Is there a representative of the applicant present
Yes.
here tonight? Maybe these questions should be asked later when the applicant has an opportunity to comment. My one last question, if you could bring up the, it was the floor plan that shows the concession area with the, that's it. On the opposite side of the lobby, where it shows a stairway with a door, that's not the way the theater looks today. That's it's actually an open area over there, and I'm curious why that wasn't used. Maybe that question should be asked of the applicant. Maybe it's not a staff question to answer.
Yeah, I'll defer to the applicant. The applicant
fine.
is here, and also the applicant's food and beverage director to answer questions.
Okay, I'll wait for the applicant then. Did the police department have anything specific in their comments or their review that we need to know about? Or did they agree essentially with the conditions as described?
Initially, the police department wanted the applicant to revise the site plan to clearly designate that beer and wine would only be sold from a designated portion of a fixed concession area. And so the applicant revised the site plan and clearly showed that. And during the Development Advisory Conference, the police department and planning staff agreed on condition 23 for the operation and security plan. And there's a portion of that condition that allows the security and operation plan to be amended with approval of the community development director and police department if changes are necessary.
So generally, the police department concurred with the security requirements proposed?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Thank you. I will ask more when we have the applicant available.
Commissioner Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Chair Espinosa. On the definition of what a beer is and what a wine is, I think I read in the conditions for the beer that it's a maximum of 16 ounces. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good.
That's an example of where the security and operation plan exceeds the ABC requirements.
Right, because the ABC requirements allows for a 25-ounce cup. I don't know if that means you have 25 ounces of beer in there, but if it is, it's, 3 times 25, that's 75 ounces of beer. So that's why I'm asking the question. Thank you. And then is there a definition on wine, on how many ounces are in a wine? Perhaps the applicant can speak to that as well.
No, I'll defer to the applicant.
So,
Okay.
no, just to answer your question, we did not put a limit on how many ounces for wine.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Renville.
I didn't have too much in the way of questions, but one of mine tied into Commissioner Murphy's as far as sizes. And one of my questions was, how did they define a serving, or, what a serving is? So if it's 15 ounces of beer, but then it sounds like we don't have a definitive definition for a serving of wine. So that would be a little confusing. And I know for me, one of my questions and concerns was just even if they stayed or used allowance of 3 drinks per movie. If you're only in there for a couple hours or something, 3 drinks sounds kind of excessive to me. So I had that question as far as part of what I read. But I think that's all I have for general questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Couple questions I have. I wanted to ask about if someone were to purchase alcohol, either beer or wine, would they be able to physically drink the beverage in that area there where there are tables and chairs that's not in the auditorium? And is that the intent of this operations security plan, or is it just the intent for the folks to buy the beverages, take them in the auditorium, and drink them in there?
The intent is for the moviegoers to bring the beverage into the theater.
Okay, so they're not going to be permitting people to just sit there and drink amongst the general population, okay?
And when I visited the site, there's no tables or chairs set up there,
Okay,
and I don't believe that they are proposed.
okay. And another question relates to the limits that you've placed on how many, for an individual to go up and purchase, they have 3 drink maximum, is that correct?
Yes.
And if they're with, let's say their spouse, and they're purchasing 2 at a time, are they able to then, make a purchase, 3 separate purchases, 2 at a time, and turn around, hand the spouse a drink, and go into the auditorium? Is that what that's
Yeah.
supposed to function?
Yes, but each purchase is recorded on, and there's a requirement that each customer that's being served, whether or not they make the purchase, is physically present at the counter.
Okay, so both people that will be drinking would have to be there at the counter while the purchase is being made. And they're noting the seat location
Yeah.
and so forth, and then policing that throughout every 30 minutes. Okay,
There's a tracking sheet that is in the agenda report that is where the staff of the concession record the movie ticket, because every guest that comes to the movie theater is assigned a seat.
Okay.
Everyone has assigned seating, so the seat number is recorded on there. So the purchase quantity can be tracked against the seat number.
right. So theoretically, one person could be purchasing a total of 6 drinks if they're with a partner that's there at the counter when they're making the purchase.
Yes.
Correct, okay.
Yes, that's correct, as long as they're doing it in separate transactions of no more than 2 each.
Right, okay.
Did you say that one person could purchase 6 drinks?
Total.
Is that what your question
3,
was?
yeah, in 3 separate trips, they'd be purchasing a total of 6 drinks
But
on,
they were purchasing, if one person was purchasing 6 drinks, wouldn't they need both tickets to allow that too?
Correct.
right, the person has to be there with them when they make the purchase. So you can't just like make a run back to the counter without your spouse going with you and being there to make that purchase, yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that a little.
Okay,
Because I was hearing it one way, that maybe
Yeah.
they could just go
Yeah.
purchase the 6 drinks without proof of another person, so.
right. And then lastly, I wanted to ask about the operations security plan. Should, through the course of operations, they feel that they need to add to it, modify it, in order to provide for better safety, security, would that require, is that considered a significant change that might require that to alter the CUP as an amendment, or is that going to be handled administratively in that instance where the operation security plan changes?
Yes, so we would handle that administratively, so if there was an issue, we would be able to address at the staff level in conjunction with the police department reviewing it. And primarily, it's probably going to be at their recommendation. And then, if there is, continued issue, that's when we'd actually bring it back to you guys to review the permit.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public comment period for this agenda item. And I do have 2 speaker cards. They may be from the applicant, but I have a Scott Timko. You have 3 minutes?
I'm here to answer any questions. I'm representing to answer questions.
Okay. Do you have any general comments you wanted to make, or okay. Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant at this time?
Okay. I guess I'm on again.
Okay. Commissioner Talmadge.
We talked a little bit at my questions earlier about a secure area for the beer and wine concession. Is it only just marked like we saw in that one picture with some sort of decorative column or something that said beer and wine here? There's free access in the back of the concession area for any of the attendants. So how are you going to control the actual sale? Are you going to have someone that's 21 serving the alcohol?
So
Will be on site all times?
Someone 21 age or older will be serving alcohol,
Right.
and there will be no one else entering that area that is under 21.
Okay, is there a door or a gate or anything?
Currently, there is no door or
I know, right.
existing.
Yeah, it's just
There's
open
no
now.
plan to,
Yeah,
currently.
okay. Now, would that person be stationed in that area the whole time, or would they just come and go as the crowd dictated?
They will be available in the concession stand at all times.
Okay,
I cannot say that they will be limited to that area, the designated area, at all times.
okay. But they're available.
But they will always be available,
Okay.
yes.
Why did you pick that one particular area? Why didn't you go across the lobby for the beer and wine concession?
I'm the food and beverage director, and I was not in on those conversations, so I cannot answer that. I don't know why.
Who can answer that question?
This is Giancarlo Zucchini. I think he can answer.
I'm one of the vice presidents for the company. That
Whose name?
area was never, it's not an actual concession stand.
Right.
It was an empty area. It was never, it was an-
Excuse me, before you proceed, would you go ahead and state your name for the record? Thank you.
Giancarlo Tocchini, representative of Santa Rosa Cinemas.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was just never, it was in an original drawing of the theater, but never made into a concession stand. We've had talks about it, but we figured it would be harder to do a full construction, build a full concession stand in that area. So, and it was, likely to have more staffing as well, as we'd have to have staffing in 2 different locations.
Would this be a difficult thing for you to do if we were to make that a condition of approval, that the concession be moved to the other side of the lobby?
I would have to talk to some other people in the company to see. I don't do any of the building on that, on that side of it, so it'd be something we'd have to discuss.
Okay, so there's no one here that can answer that question? Okay. Are you satisfied that the conditions that have been applied to the concession stand for the sale of beer and wine are appropriate? Can you live with the conditions as they're stated?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Are they the same as your other theaters?
For the most part, yeah. In our other theaters, we can sell, other food items at our beer and alcohol kiosk, and that would probably be the only difference I've noticed. But other than that, they're pretty much the same.
I see. It says in your conditions or in the report that you will be checking every 30 minutes those people that bought beer and wine. Are you literally going to have someone go in each theater and with their little flashlight or something, look and see if that person is in that seat drinking?
We will do that. Scott can actually answer that better, as he works with those people on a daily basis.
So there will be a designated checker, typically a manager, but not limited to. There could be a supervisor, 21 plus in that capacity, serving that duty. But they will be going in there. We do have them equipped with either flashlights or red illuminated cones that kind of similar to air traffic things. And those people will be going in there checking.
Okay.
Tickets sold F4, F5 in Theater 3. We go in there and verify that F4 and F5 have the...
Okay. I'm sort of chuckling. You're too young to remember, but in the old days in theaters, we had ushers that went along with flashlights that they would shine on you, and if you got shined with the light, you're in trouble. But anyway, no.
So we will shine if we can't see it, and people typically are aware and they know that we will be doing checking because people ask, why are you recording the information? So customers are aware, and
Yeah, it seems to me that the biggest thing would be someone legitimately buying, going to their seat and then passing it to the row back behind them or something. And
with designated cups for alcoholic beverages, it's easily identifiable.
I see, okay. I'm looking at my own notes here. Now, I think that's it for me for now. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. Well, do you have any further thing you'd like to add at this point? Okay, thank you so much for your comments.
We have questions.
You have questions, Commissioner Murphy?
Yes, Scott, thank you for coming up to answer these questions. What will be your wine serving size, and are you comfortable with putting some sort of a limitation on that in the conditions of approval?
So wine servings are in 5 ounce. We have the allowance for 15 ounces of wine, which is just over a half a bottle of wine.
15 ounces would be one drink?
No. 5 ounces is one drink.
Okay. So are you comfortable with putting a 5-ounce limit per wine serving in the conditions of approval?
Yes.
Okay. And my last question is, I saw in there that there'll be an individual that determines whether someone has had too much to drink. Will that probably be the same person who is serving the wine and beer?
That will be the person serving.
Okay, and
No one is allowed, you don't serve, in the state of California, you cannot serve alcohol to an intoxicated person. That falls onto the trained and certified person, bartender of sorts.
okay, well, it'd be a trained and certified bartender? I didn't realize that, but,
With the alcohol, the ABC, RBS training.
okay. And that individual will always have that certification or that training?
It's a requirement, in the state of California.
Excellent. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Murphy. Any other? Commissioner or Vice Chair Vandermeulen?
Thanks. My question question is really kind of directed down to Commissioner Talmadge, because I'm not familiar with the interior that much of the theater. So when you're talking about an area on the other side as you go in, if, I remember kind of where that might be pictured. If people were lining up back, lined up for the alcohol on one side and food and beverage on the other side, would that create any sort of a jam log from people coming into the theater?
Well, I think the answer is, obviously, it depends on how many people are doing what. Right now, you could go in, you could be first in line, and it's no problem. If you happen to hit a big-time show, people are waiting to get into the theater for the next show, and that backs into the lobby. And I've had that experience. But the area that I was referring to is actually physically, if this is the concession stand that they have proposing now, the area I'm proposing is over here. It's not directly opposite. It's actually offset and up a little like this. So you could have sinuous route, but yeah. You see on this drawing where it indicates right where the arrow is, it looks like a little stairway. Well, I don't know if that stairway is there or not. I suppose it is, because you have to get up to the projection room somehow. But there is an indentation in that area off the lobby that to me makes a lot of sense that you would put that other concession area over there for the beer and wine. The food, for the most part, is in this lower part of the existing concession stand. That's where the popcorn and the candy bars and the hot dogs and things like that. The upper end is, right now, not used. It may be, I don't know what happens there, but not much. All the machines for concession are all down on the lower part of that concession area. So I don't know if there would be a backup of people. I think it really depends on the loading and how many people are going to watch a particular movie. But it's not directly across from the existing concession stand. It's actually up almost into that hallway. And there's a wide area. In fact, there's a table and a couple of chairs that sit in there right now.
Yeah, I can almost see though, if I picture people in line all waiting for that, then going up the hall and around to the other theaters, it might be kind of in the way.
Oh, it is. I've waited in line in that hallway for, certain, first big run movies, and it's packed. So it can be problematic. That's true.
Okay. I was having trouble picturing it because I was actually thinking of this area that I was seeing on the other side down towards the entrance. So.
Yeah, no, if you get too far down, you get near the entry to the restrooms,
Okay.
and that can get congested too.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, a lot of discussion on an item that is not yet on the proposed project, but we can definitely visit that in the roundtable. Do we have any further comments from the public? Okay, we have one more speaker card. That is A.J. Aherm on this item. You have 3 minutes?
Is this an okay spot on the mic?
Yep.
So I'm coming to speak in support of the project. I'm a neighbor. I live in Testa Robles, just across the street from the project, so I'll definitely be enjoying it myself. But I just wanted to note two things. One concern that I thought there'd actually be more people here for is the proximity to the school, to which I was just going to note that there's 7 restaurants with liquor licenses between the freeway and Burger Barn and 2 liquor stores, plus the hotel you can go in and get a drink as well. But also in terms of this location discussion, and really I'm pretty interested in the overall separation of the drinks and the rest of the food. It seems kind of counterproductive to me on 2 fronts. In terms of the location, and kind of based on what the F&B director mentioned, it sounds like if the food section is busy, there's a possibility that if there's no one in the beer and wine line, that person in another, if there's not a separation, might be able to go and assist during those times, and having the complete separation between where all of their other food and inventory storage is, and putting it across the way logistically would be a little bit of a nightmare for the staff working. But in terms of this current restriction that the the beer and wine needs to be sold separately from the food, you'd think that you'd actually want the opposite of being able to encourage someone, if they've got 3 minutes before their movie starts and they can wait in line for a beer or they can wait in line for a hot dog. I mean, don't judge me, I'd pick the beer. But if I could do it in one and get both, you want to encourage people that are going to be consuming alcohol to be consuming food, to get it to soak up. When I was in college, I was a part of Greeks advocating the mature management of alcohol, and we did everything we could to get food in front of the people that were getting drinks at the fraternity and sorority parties, to the point where you had to have 10 or 15 pizzas if you're ever going to throw a party, because we want to be soaking it up. So I would strongly recommend, I'd hate to create more work or any delay on the CUP, but I would strongly urge you to reconsider that restriction and allow for people to be able to purchase both at the same time. I know there's going to be that worry of mixing alcohol and potential kids going to the movies and this and that, but I just think logistically for them on their side, which we know the movie industry was hit hard, and let's make it as easy as possible on them, but also for the consumer side, I'd much prefer to be able to get both at the same time than have to wait in line twice and create longer lines for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, no further cards. Well, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period, and I'll turn to our fellow commissioners on their comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you've heard a number of my concerns. I understand why they put the concession area for the sale of beer and wine where they did. It may be not possible to put it across the way. I don't know what kind of plumbing is required for beer and wine sales, but I doubt that there's anything on the other side of the lobby except if you tapped into one of the water lines or the waste line that is in the adjacent restroom. So that it may simply be just too hard to do. I just wanted to hear that, had you even considered it, and if so, and you eliminated it, what the reasons were. And I think we heard a little bit of that. And I appreciate the last comments about the ability to just wait in one line and get what you want. But a lot of the restrictions that come upon us come from the alcoholic and beverage control and other requirements that are somewhat beyond what we can do. And it's ABC and some of the other regulatory agencies that want the separation in this particular circumstance. This isn't like a restaurant where you go for beer and a hot dog at the same place. You can get them, but there's something you have to go through. So we debated this issue some time ago when we first considered the change in the ordinance to permit something like this. And this is the first opportunity that we've had to actually apply it. And I welcome the opportunity to have some comment on it and have some discussion. Generally, I would have to say that I am in support of this project as presented, and I wish them good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Talmadge. Commissioner Murphy.
All right, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Talmadge, I appreciated your comments about relocating that area until AJ came up and covered some reasonable logistics issues with that. I didn't know I'd be going back to my college days on this, but I did like the reasoning and all the points that were brought up on that. I would like to see some definition on what constitutes a serving of wine. I think that I heard from the applicant that 5 ounces as a maximum for the wine, and adding that to the conditions would not be an issue. And with that, I can, this is our first opportunity. It's great to see Roxy back in business and being able to provide a little something extra for the moviegoers. So I can support this project on that basis.
Were you not making a recommendation for a additional condition on the wine quantity?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Architectural Committee had its meeting prior to this meeting, and we reviewed the plans. They're on the wall over here. Oh, I'm sorry. No, there's no Architectural Committee on this one. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm thinking
No,
ahead.
My question was
when that
for
happens.
Commissioner Murphy on the 5 ounces we talked about. Is that,
Yeah.
earlier we were saying there was no limitation on that, so I was asking whether or not you wanted to visit that as a condition to be incorporated.
Yes, and I would trust that staff could add that condition, and that's not something that we would need to come back and review. Is that correct?
No, how I would recommend that we proceed is that, finish the commissioner discussion, and then at the time of making the motion, include that in the motion. And then staff will write that into the condition.
Okay.
Okay, very well. Vice Chair Vandermeer?
Thank you. Well, my initial concerns came with the amount of drinks during a movie, and also allowing serving of alcohol like any time that the theater's open, rather than like afternoon and evenings. Thinking if there's more children's shows in the middle of the day or something, you'll have more kids running around. But knowing that if there are problems that occur, and it will be watched, that it can be changed along the way to adjust for any necessary needs and prevent any other problems on that. One of the things, thinking about this gentleman's concern about wanting to make sure you get food balanced with the alcohol, I don't know if there would be any way to consider being able to order the food while they're buying the alcohol and then have a certain one line to go pick it up. That way, if you can manage to do something like that, where they could stand in line once, buy their alcohol, or order and pay for their food, but just have to go pick it up at a different line. Something that might speed that up a little bit and encourage them to continue to buy the food to go along with the alcohol. But I don't know if that would work out or not. It's just an idea I had when I was listening to the conversation. But other than that, I think it's going to be a nice use for the theater. A lot of people are going to enjoy it and probably bring more business in. I'd be happy just with one beer. So, yeah, it'll be a nice improvement.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. So my comments mainly, I think, are supportive of the proposal, and I know that we've discussed this extensively during the ordinance consideration period, and knowing that we were going to be looking at the details of each case-by-case request to take this step. And this is a first for the city of Camarillo as far as alcohol sales in theaters. And I did review the ABC requirements as well as the operations security plan that's been put together here in the city, which is more restrictive. And it is just beer and wine at this point. I think that understanding the impact that COVID has had on theater going. I mean, I myself have only been to the theater probably twice in 2 years now, which is never imagined that was going to be the case, but here we are. But we certainly know that there are other theaters out there in other cities that are moving this direction and trying to, make it more attendance friendly for the adults over 21, and doing it in a responsible way. So I think starting out here, I see this as a responsible plan to start out with, and any changes that need to be made can be made with the provisions that are in these conditions. And so I can support this. So with that, do I have Commissioner motion for resolution on the item?
I'll go ahead and read the resolution right now. So resolution number PC 2022-05, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving a request by Roxy Stadium 11 for a conditional use permit to allow for the on-sale of beer and wine in a movie theater located at 5001 Verdugo Way in the plaza at Mission Oaks in the Commercial Plan Development CPD zone, further described as CUP 414.
I'll move that we waive further reading and add the following condition of approval to this application regarding wine servings and wines, and I believe it would read something like, wine servings shall be limited to a maximum of 5 fluid ounces per serving.
Do you want to say beer also?
Do I have a second on Commissioner Murphy's
You want to say beer, the number for beer?
motion?
There's a little bit of a discussion up here. So there is a provision in the conditions of approval limiting the quantity of beer to 16 ounces. If this condition can be placed as close to that as possible so that it's all in one place.
Yes, we'll include that in the same condition, where the beer is limited to 16 ounces, and then the wine will be limited to 5 fluid ounces.
Excellent.
Covers the two
Thank you.
things.
Okay, so motion to adopt the resolution has been made with incorporated condition to be included. And we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been seconded by Commissioner Talmadge. Okay. Go ahead and place your vote, please. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda will be conditional use permit, CUP 410, AT&T Mobility, adopt resolution approving CUP 410. If we can have staff report for this item, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our newly promoted senior planner, Paul McLaren, will be giving this presentation.
Good evening, Chair Espinoza, Commissioners. Tonight I'll be presenting CUP 410 at 2301 Daly Drive, a new stealth wireless facility. The applicant is Jerry Ambrose for the Yukon Group on behalf of AT&T. The applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit for the installation of a new stealth wireless communications facility on an existing building and for an additional increase in the allowable height of that building. The PO zone allows a height of 25 feet. The building is currently 47 feet 4 inches, and the applicant is requesting to go to 55 feet in height. This is the project location. It is the existing Everest building, which is at the corner of Arneal and Daly Drive. So Lomita Street is to the north, Glen Drive is to the east, Arneal is to the west, and then it's just north of the 101 and Daly Drive. This is the existing site as the building looks today. And this is looking from Arneal Drive Arneal Road and Daly Drive to the northeast. This 12,524 square foot, 3-story office building was approved in 1989 as Conditional Plan Development CPD 153. There was also at the same time a conditional use permit, CUP 101, that was brought forward to allow an overall building height of 45 feet, which was approved at the time. The POZO, again, allows for a building height of 25 feet unless the Planning Commission approves additional height, and this was approved at that time for the 45 feet in height. However, the plans that have been submitted by the applicant indicate that the final height of the building ended up being 47 feet 4 inches. And again, they're trying to go to 55 feet, so approximately 8 feet taller on just the cupola section of the building. So the picture up to the right is the entire parcel. Again, it takes up essentially the entire block here. There is one other parcel on the property that has a building on it that is adjacent to the existing building. The green area is the actual building, and the rest of the parcel is parking. And then if you go to the left picture, you see the green box is the actual building, and the red portion within that box is the cupola where this wireless facility would be installed. So at the roof level, you can actually come onto the roof through a roof hatch, and that is over here. There's a roof hatch that you can get onto the roof. This whole flat section of roof is behind a mansard roof that goes all the way around the perimeter of the building, and then there is a door into the existing cupola right here. And that door would bring you into a section here, and this is where all of the wireless equipment is going to be enclosed within this space. And then in order to get they'll be adding additional height in order to be able to then attach all of the wireless antennas to that additional height so that they are able to broadcast around and above the building. So everything will be enclosed within this cupola building. So this is just an example. This actually is over in Camarillo Old Town. Some of you are probably familiar with this building, the KW Realty building. And this is actually a wireless facility that's been approved by the city. And you can't really tell that it's there. This has been built with what's called fiberglass reinforced panels. And these fiberglass reinforced panels can be basically made to look like anything, but they are transparent to the wireless communications signals. And then you can actually put molding on them and give architectural details. And then from the backside, and this is actually a picture that was just taken yesterday because this had undergone a modification. And this is what the modification from the rooftop looks like. So you can see that the reinforced fiberglass panels aren't all that thick. They've got a lot of this structure here to give it structural support in order to make sure that it's going to be resistant. They put a fire extinguisher up there for emergency, just in case of emergencies. They do put markings around to let people know that they're entering an area where there are, radio transmissions going on. And so this is just an example of a similar situation as the one that we're proposing, except the one we're proposing will actually be completely enclosed, so you won't see any of the bracing or any of the equipment at all, even if you're on the roof until you enter the cupola area. So just to give you an idea of the proximity, to the north of this property, we have the CCM zone or the commercial mixed-use zone. And then we also have the commercial plan development zone, and then to the north and east are residential plan development zones. This whole property is a professional office zone. And when you go and you look at this, the proximity to the nearest residential site to the west is 250 feet away. This is actually in the RPD zone, but it's Central Market, and so the next closest property, which is actually a vacant lot, is 221 feet away, and then it's 292 feet to this residential property here. And this, they did submit as part of their application an electromagnetic energy compliance report that shows that this property is going to comply with FCC guidelines. This is a personal cellular service station, which means that it's allowed to have 2,000 watts of effective radiated power coming out of this, and that's what the FCC guidelines are. What that means is that on the ground or anywhere surrounding this building, to include the balconies, the maximum amount of exposure is going to be 1.47% of that maximum allowable exposure. So less than 2% of the 2,000 watts of effective radiated power would be hitting anybody on the ground or balconies around this building or even inside the building. On the roof itself, it's still going to be below that 100% until you actually go in the cupola, and that's why we have conditioned the project to have warning labels both on the hatch that exits onto the roof and then also on the cupola itself, to where people who would need to go up there and work are also going to be notified that this is up there, and that's per FCC guidelines that you have to put these warning notifications like I showed in the previous picture. So these are photo simulations of the building. So the existing cupola element ends typically at this section here, and then what they're adding is they're going to be adding this molding, taking the existing roof off of it, and then they're going to be adding the fiberglass reinforced panels up here, and then a hip roof on top of that. The hip roof has the same exact tile as the rest of the building. The color is a matching stucco. The trim is all matching. We've asked them to pull this window feature up in with one less pane, a little bit smaller window up here. This is all going to be incorporated, but it won't be a real window, it'll be a faux window, and that's on each facade of the tower element. And then you can see it from different angles is how it's going to look. Here are some elevations of it. So this is the existing elevation, and then this will be the new elevation, and it's showing where the antennas will be inside, but again, they're inside, not visible from the exterior. Kind of for some reference, we pointed the applicant to this church right across the freeway from the site, which has this tower element on it, and said, we need to kind of get some of this design going on in here so that we have a nice tower element, because this looks, it looks very nice, and it should be incorporated into this in order to be able to make it look like a nice part of the building. These are just the other elevations, so you can see from all different directions what this tower element will look like. Then this is the objective. So currently, we have the water tower. AT&T has antennas on the water tower at this location. They have antennas on a tower that's just north of the Amazon distribution facility. And then we have a tower that's at one of the athletic fields at Bob Kildee Park. And with these three towers, they get indoor signals in all this green area. They have strong indoor signals, and they're lacking that strong indoor signal around this location. So the intent is to fill in this gap and allow customers in this area to get a better signal indoors. And so with the proposed site, this is what the modeling would predict as to what kind of signal will be in that area once the site is installed and become operational. And then this is just a little, this is without taking these three towers into effect, this is the way the signal would radiate. And so in this case, if they were to attach these antennas directly to the facade of the building, they wouldn't get the height and they wouldn't get the distance to be able to fill that gap. And you would also have some antennas sticking on the outside of the building, which wouldn't look very attractive. And so by allowing the additional height, they're actually going to be able to get those antennas higher, which will allow the signal to go farther and do a better job of filling in their gap in coverage. And then it is also going to look much better because you will not be able to see the antennas at all. Once this thing is built, a couple of years down the road, nobody will ever even know that that tower wasn't always there, and nobody will have a clue that there's a wireless facility inside of it. So this project was reviewed in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act and the state CEQA guidelines, as well as the city's guidelines, and it's been determined to be categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA under a Class 3, which is new construction or conversion of small structures. And since this is just adding a very small portion to a building, it is exempt. So staff recommends adoption of the resolution approving CUP 410 with the additional height, subject to the recommended conditions of approval, and these actions of the Planning Commission are final unless an appeal is filed within 10 days of the date of this action. And with that, my presentation is concluded.
Okay, thank you so much for that report. Does staff have commissioners, questions of staff at this time?
I
Commissioner
don't
Talley?
have any questions of staff at this point. However, I believe there's representative of the applicant here, and I would like to ask the applicant questions when it's appropriate.
Okay, we'll hold them for that time. You have questions of staff?
Yes,
Commissioner
I
Murphy?
think I'm the same as Commissioner Talmadge. I have some questions having to do with the radio frequency electromagnetic exposure, which is detailed in the report, and I believe that those questions would best be asked of the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Vanderbilt?
I think
Question?
a couple of questions I have are also for the applicant.
For the applicant, okay. Let me ask A couple of questions here of staff. I think I saw that the actual cupola is going to be constructed by others. Is that it's not actually AT&T that will construct the enclosure, but it'll be a contractor that specializes in this?
Yeah, so AT&T has, they don't build anything. AT&T only does wireless, so they contract the design, they contract everything out to third parties. In this case, they even contracted the permitting to Yukon Group. So AT&T is really just in the business of, well, AT&T Mobility is in the business of wireless, and so they have experts that they contract with and contractors that specialize in these areas to actually do the construction.
Okay. The follow-up maintenance and so forth, will that be something that is also contracted, or will AT&T handle that aspect of?
So it'll also end up being contracted, and a lot of times what ends up happening is these facilities actually end up, they get sold to tower companies once they're installed, and then AT&T leases them back from the tower companies. So American Tower is one of the largest, and there's also Crown Castle is a very large one, and they end up owning a lot of towers in the area.
Okay.
And they end up maintaining them.
Okay. I looked at the municipal code has very extensive requirements of these types of facilities, and there's one provision in there that talks about independent technical experts, like outsourcing for reviewing what AT&T is proposing in getting into the aspects of the radio frequency, and so forth. Have we ever gone that route? Or is it all done in-house in terms of reviewing what
No,
they're?
so the city is currently under contract with Telecom Law Firm, and they do our third-party review. And so this project is conditioned that 60 days after final sign-off on the project, that they also are going to have another company come out, and they're going to actually have to do an in-field study of this facility to actually determine what the actual output is. And then they have to turn in that report to us within 60 days. And we turn that, and they pay a third-party review fee. We then send that to Telecom Law Firm. Telecom Law Firm reviews that. They let us know whether or not it's meeting what they stated and what the FCC guidelines require. And so we will get that third-party review.
Okay.
Make sure that it actually is compliant with FCC guidelines.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for staff at this time. So with that, we will open up the public comment period for this item. And if we can have the applicant come forward.
Good evening, Chairman. Is this on? Is this on? Okay.
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Ambrose. I'm here on behalf of AT&T with Yukon Group. And I don't have anything to add at this time to Paul's presentation. It was very thorough. So I'm here to answer your questions.
Okay, and with that, we'll turn to Commissioner Talmadge.
Okay. I get to go again. We discussed the exterior materials, and we saw an application where it is already being used for the fiberglass panel, and I think that's a good idea. But I am concerned about the structural weight. The antennas themselves, I imagine, are fairly heavy objects, and I'm curious as to the dead load that's being implied on the existing structure, whether that's going to be sufficient or if additional work is required to build up the existing building to support the weight of these antenna and other related equipment on the equivalent of a fourth floor.
Yes, there will be a structural upgrade of the current roof framing to support the equipment and the antennas. Both the antennas and the equipment cabinets are both heavy,
Yeah,
relatively speaking, but
my guess is it's going to be much more than just roof framing. You're probably going to have to go all the way to the
possibly
foundation.
go to the floor, yeah. And we've had all that work done.
Okay, all right. I'm concerned about shielding. Is the floor of this room where the antenna will be placed, is it shielded or contain any materials that shield against radio frequency transmission?
No, it's not currently designed like that. We don't design the projects like that. But if that would be a requirement, we could definitely consider, I don't know what that would be, but we could definitely consider it.
Well, let me ask the question a different way. In your experience, do you have other installations of antenna similar to this where you do have to have shielding of the floor to protect the occupants of the building below?
I do not personally have any experience with that. I have heard of that scenario, though.
Okay.
Never personally worked on a project. I've worked on hundreds and hundreds of projects.
Right.
I have not had any personal involvement with that kind of a design.
Are these directional antenna or are they?
They are.
Okay. So you're not going to have stray radiation going away from the antenna. It's not like a broad beam just going everywhere.
It's kind of like a sort of a C shape. You know, the signal goes kind of up and out and then straight out.
I see. Okay. So this is a freestanding unit. It's not like you're linking with another station to retransmit data or other information on these antenna, because sometimes you have relay stations from one to the next. This is just a standalone. You have a signal that comes in and it just broadcasts from that point.
Correct, yeah, it's a standalone in that sense, but
Yeah.
of course it does work within a network.
Oh, yeah, right, I
sort
get
of a
that.
honeycomb of cell sites.
Right,
So as people travel through the network, you know, the signals get handed off site to site to site.
yeah, sure, which tower you hit at the time.
Correct.
Is there any specific requirement for fire prevention in the room where the antenna are placed? For example, in some electronic installations, there's requirements for halon to be used as a fire protection device. Is that required in this case?
Yeah, I think the city had requested that we do sprinklers, but we don't. We actually use and it may be what you're referring to, we use sort of a foam type material.
Well, it's either foam or gas, inert gas that just suppresses a
They
fire.
don't want water in there, so they use that alternative. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's some kind of a foam material that would react to any kind of fire.
Okay, well,
That's
when-
been approved by the cities and counties.
Okay. Anything with water around antennas, to me, is
Yeah, it tends to be a little.
Not a good
bit of
idea.
Smoke, maybe, yeah.
okay. Is there a requirement for additional ventilation in the room because of a buildup of heat from the equipment? Or does it have to be air-conditioned?
It will be air conditioned.
Okay, because I heard earlier that it was just ventilated, and I wondered about that. So it is air-conditioned. Is that like the equivalent of a window unit,
No,
or?
actually, I should retract that perhaps. Paul may, Paul, do you recall? I don't recall off the top of my head, I apologize.
Yeah, so let me get to the image here. So these windows that are in the cupola section,
Right.
they're not actually going to have glass in them.
No, I get it.
They're
I understand
faux.
that.
And so it's actually just a mesh screen in there that's painted black. And so that will allow air to pass in and out of the cupola. And then they've also gone and they've added roof vents as well. And so it's all going to end up being to where the heat just goes up and out through the roof vents and through the faux window openings.
So it
So it will not need air conditioning.
Okay, so there's no environmental control per se.
There is not.
It's just whatever wind blows is what it blows, okay.
And my apologies, we took over this project from another company.
Okay,
So I guess I didn't fully absorb the design.
all right.
on that.
Well, I think that answers my questions for right now. I may come up with others, but thank you very much for being here, Mr. Ambrose.
That's great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Murphy, you have questions for the applicant?
Thank you, Chair Espinosa. And this question may come back to Paul from the first question that Gene had, and that had to do with the structural integrity of the new structure. This building will go through a building permit, will it not?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think in that process, then, the structural evaluation would occur. All right. And my questions have to do with the EBI Consulting Executive Summary regarding RF EME, or radio frequency electromagnetic exposures. There's 4 different categories, 4 different areas, and 2 of them, as I understand it, and I need an education on this because this is well above my pay grade. But in areas C and D, the exposures exceed the FCC levels, and then there's mitigation measures that are proposed for that. So in C and D, are those areas where people will come into the building and be working, say up on the top floor, and accessing the, I think there's a deck out there on the backside. Are those areas C and D actually where people come to work and every day?
Paul, do you have that close at hand by chance, that report? There are 2. Generally, there's 2. There's occupational and public. I refer to it as occupational. That would be people working on the project, including AT&T techs.
Right.
I don't know those off the top of my head. I don't know those
Okay.
categories you're talking about.
Are you referring to the sectors, C and D, in the report?
Right. So on page 14 of the, I think it's 14 of this report, 17 to 14 of the staff report, and site summary, I guess that's the quickest way to look at it. Exhibit A, page 14 of 37.
Right.
There's a site summary there. Down further in the report, it describes how the exposure levels are beyond FCC standards, and this is a summary of what they would do within those mobility sectors. So to answer your question, yes, I'm
Yes.
referring to
So the
mobility sectors,
the
C and D.
The C, D, A, and B, they actually refer to the directions that the wireless antennas are facing. So they have 4 sectors in this case, and the exposure is only ever exceeds the FCC standards inside the cupola, basically right underneath or in front of the antennas. And these antennas, let me go ahead and get to this. So inside the cupola here, this area in this corner, and well, maybe all the way out to here, and this area here, basically all of the corners, that's where you're going to be exceeding the FCC standards. Once that signal, and in this case, sector C is basically just then going straight out from that FRP screen, and it won't have the ability to touch anybody because it's 3 stories above, well, it's 40, at this point, 45 feet above grade. In this sector, it goes out above, in sector D, it goes out above the roof for a period of time before it then goes past the building. There will be also sections going this way, but, you know, speaking to Commissioner Talmadge's earlier question, these are panel antennas, and panel antennas are directional. And when you look at a panel antenna, there's a basically 3% declination from the bottom going downward, and a 3% declination going upward from the top of the antenna. From the vertical, it's basically 60 degrees or 30 degrees from center off the center. And that's basically how these broadcast is in a cone. So most of these signals aren't ever even going to touch the roof, much less penetrate the roof, because their intent is not to broadcast directly to the ground. As a matter of fact, you would probably be at ground level, and you won't even, you could have a horrible AT&T signal at ground level because the signal's not getting to you. You have to step away from the building and get out of the shadow of the building before the signal ever even touches you.
All right. So,
And then the, you know, if you look at the Federal Office of Engineering and Technology Bulletin 65. It will tell you that the radiation that's being emitted from these antennas falls off extremely quickly, to where within 6 feet of the front of the antenna, you're already probably dropping below FCC limits, and within 10 feet, you're well below FCC limits. And that's why in this report, it actually shows that on the rooftop itself, there is a green shaded area on the flat portion of the roof, and that's still below FCC limits in that shaded portion of the roof, but then it actually falls below 5% of the FCC limits halfway down the flat portion of the roof. So that's how quickly this actually falls off.
Okay, so sectors A, B, C, and D are all within the cupola or above.
Yes.
And there's no overlap of sector C and D with the workspace of employees that work at this building. Is that correct?
Correct. The only
Right.
time that there is going to ever be anybody in those areas, and it would actually be in Sector A or in Sector B, would be when somebody is servicing air conditionings and HVAC equipment on the roof itself.
Right, and those two sectors have barriers, physical barriers,
Yes,
correct?
there will be physical barriers and signage, just even leaving the hatch on the roof, there is a warning label letting people know that they're going into a wireless area.
Got it. And then C and D has no barriers, warning signs only.
Yeah, and the only way
Because,
to...
So it says here that barriers are not recommended because the areas of concern extend into free space over lower working surfaces. Those lower walking surfaces, the concern is the access of AT&T personnel up into the cupola, or am I mixing?
They're talking about the lower working spaces, meaning the conference room on the third floor. And so if you go and you look, this is Sector D is here, coming off this direction, and Sector C is this direction. And so on the roof level, you'd have to be walking on the slope of the roof itself in order to be able to access where it exceeds FCC limits. Below this surface, you're inside the envelope of the building, and the signal is basically going right over the envelope of the building. So it's not penetrating into the envelope of the building.
All right, thank you, that's very, very helpful.
Absolutely.
That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner, or Vice Chair Random, do you have questions for the applicant?
I have kind of simple questions because a lot of this is just over my head and I'm kind of in learning mode here. One question I had, is this strictly going to be for AT&T customers or will other providers be coming in on these towers also?
So there is the possibility always of co-location. However, that's really up to the applicant. Well, it's up to another provider. Our code does require that they build these to where they could have co-location. And so in this case, there's room in there that they may be able to put some additional equipment in there. But at the moment, this is only going to be for AT&T.
Okay. And if it were to another company, they would have to add additional equipment inside?
Yes, it would be a modification application, and that's where they would end up getting additional equipment would be added.
Okay. Wasn't sure how that worked. When you mentioned the screens for the windows and for the air to go in and out and stuff, what about in rain? Is there any chance that rain's going to go inside or get any moisture inside the building, in the tower?
No, the screening is such that the holes are so small that the rain would instead hit the screen, and then it's going to end up actually blocking the holes. And then there's also eaves on, small eaves, but eaves still on the roof that'll also help to keep the rain out.
Wind and rain. And one of my first thoughts after we had a huge windstorm last January, and because you're attaching to another section, so there's going to be a joint there, does all the engineering statistics cover like 100-mile-an-hour winds? Or?
They're going to end up designing this to handle any dynamic or static wind loads. It'll be engineered in order to be able to handle that, and almost always engineers over-design something, so they usually have a design limit says 100%, and they add a 50% safety factor above and beyond what they determine to be 100%. So they will make sure that it can handle any dynamic or static wind loads, as well as dead loads.
The city building department will also ensure that that's all accurate and up to date.
Yeah, I mean, normally we don't get winds that strong, but last January it was really, really bad, so there's no saying that that couldn't happen, again.
Yeah, I'm guessing it'll be designed to 110 mile per hour wind loads. That's what is being seen right now in the area.
Okay. And that's, I guess all my questions. Simple questions.
Okay, so you mentioned we talked about the example we saw that showed the bracing and the open to the air backing, so which was allowing ventilation, and you mentioned there was going to be, in this instance, some cooling provisions through air conditioning of that.
I was incorrect on that.
Oh, you were?
I'm sorry.
Okay. So that's not going to be the case, that
Naturally ventilated.
not just through natural ventilation, roof ventilation. And I assume there may be heat detection devices from a fire protection standpoint inside that compartment. And if not, is there any other type of heat monitoring that would be placed in there in order to?
I know that, I don't know the mechanics of it, but I know that AT&T monitors these cell sites, and if there is a heat issue, like the piece of equipment is getting too hot, obviously that would damage the equipment. So they are alerted somehow if that becomes an issue, and they need to go out and fix it or resolve it.
So you're saying that there's monitoring of the equipment itself?
If it's getting too hot, obviously it's not going to operate correctly.
Okay, so offsite.
The potential issue.
Okay, okay. And it did, I did see a couple of these charts that show the maximum permissible exposure limits in meeting the FCC guidelines. It did talk about it exceeding the FCC limits at the third floor roof level of the main roof, at the roof, but once you get below that, from what I can see, it drops down significantly down
It's off dramatically at
to-
a certain point beyond the intent.
to 6% of that. According to this, on the third-story balcony, which is 25 feet above ground level. So I think the main concerns have to do with just this, and I don't know if there's other facilities, stealth wireless towers that have been placed in occupied buildings of this nature in this manner. But we just want to really look after the safety, the concerns that might be raised by the occupants of the building that might be exposed and so forth. And so we want to be able to address those questions. And so in the 60-day period following the construction, where they're going to go back and actually do a realistic field review and monitoring of what's actually taking place in trying to see how the radio waves are being transmitted in all parts of the building and so forth. What happens if there develops an issue there, if they see that there's something that your modeling has not actually accurately predicted in terms of what the output actually is?
Yeah,
Well,
so,
They'd be mandated to fix, if there's an issue of any kind, they'd be mandated to fix it.
yeah,
'Cause under their FCC license, they must operate within those standards,
Okay.
or there's severe fines.
Okay, so they will make whatever changes, whatever repairs have to be done to keep it operating, but whatever that's going to require in order for that output to not be affecting anyone or exposing anyone
And again,
beyond those
my
limits.
personal experience, and I've also never heard of a situation where a post-construction report has had anything like that come up.
Okay, so it's a good safety record in terms of, okay,
A lot of jurisdictions require that, especially around here, Thousand Oaks.
yeah, okay. All right, well, that's all I have at this time. So with that, is there anyone else that, on your behalf or with your group, that had anything else to say?
I know the
Address the
property owner is
commission?
here. I don't know if he want, but he
Okay.
he wanted to speak or not, sorry. If you need anything, I don't know.
Yeah, you can go ahead and come up if you like, if you have anything to say, but well, we don't have a speaker card, but just introduce yourself if you do want to come up. Yeah, you can come up to the podium and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Carl Walk. I represent Walk Enterprises, Inc., who owns the property, which is my dad and his two sisters. I just want to say, I personally know a lot of the tenants, and I'm friends with a lot of the tenants, wouldn't want to do anything to put them in jeopardy. And I think that it's the most aesthetically pleasing way to do this. I think that other cell antennas on poles and whatnot are sort of an eyesore compared to this, and I care about this community a lot. I went to Channel Islands, I went to Cal State Channel Islands for school. My family's been in Ventura County for 6 generations. I wouldn't want to do anything to compromise the... You come over the freeway there and you see the building. It's a very recognizable building. I describe to people where it is, and they go, oh, yeah, I know that building. And so I wouldn't want to do anything that compromises this part of town. It's a beautiful part of town, and got the church across from there. And so I think this is actually a very aesthetically pleasing way to accomplish the goal of getting all of you with AT&T cell phones better reception over here.
All right, well, thank you so much for your comments. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and, we did have one public comment that came to us through email late today, and it was from Darrell Hill, and it was a comment basically expressing their safety concerns and their position that they were opposed to this, so we will enter that into the record. And with that, we will go ahead and turn to Commissioner comments. Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and finally get to the Ark Review Report.
I jumped the gun earlier. I wanted to take the opportunity now to say the Architectural Review Committee met prior to this meeting and reviewed the elevations and the drawings provided. And we asked a number of questions of the applicant, all of which were answered satisfactorily. We think that there's been a good job by staff working with the applicant in coming up with an extension to the tower element, adding onto the cupola and picking up some of the same themes that are in the building itself. The same kind of material for the roof, the sill underneath the window itself, and we felt that, and approved unanimously, the architecture for the proposed project. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Commissioner Talmadge, and with that, we will officially close the public hearing on this item. So I'll turn to my commissioners now for any comments they'd like to make.
I have no comments. I asked my questions and have been satisfactorily answered, and I wanted to compliment staff. This can be a tough issue with when you start dealing with electrons buzzing around and all kinds of crazy things of electromagnetic interference and radio frequency interference, all sorts of things. It can be very detrimental to the health if it's not properly taken care of. But those types of concerns have been addressed well, and I think were addressed in fine manner in the staff report. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to the applicant and for the AT&T rep, Mr. Ambrose, for being present to answer our questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Talmadge. Commissioner Rudy?
Yes, thank you. My questions, too, have been answered. Thank you to the applicant and staff. Paul, that was very helpful to me for sectors A through D, because I was concerned about the electrons, and I didn't have it in my head right when I was reading through the report, so you helped set me straight there. Thank you. The building, to me, is, ever since it was built, is one of the nicest looking buildings in town, and the tower, to me, makes it look even more prominent and outstanding. I can support this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Rudy. Vice Chair Vanderbilt?
that it might be too high and, concerned about how it was going to look. I did get in early enough to kind of look at the pictures and judge those a little bit more. And it does look really very nice. I think it's still going to be a great addition to serving the community. I myself have a little bit of jitters when I think about the extra waves and stuff going around or whatever they do. And the discussions that we had as far as workers or people on the roof or who's going to bother anybody in the building or on the decks and stuff, I think looking at it and listening to the discussions between the interior top of the mansard roof part and the bottom of where the equipment will be, looks like it'll be, nothing should be going down to even a person's head that's walking around on the roof. So, I mean, between the numbers, the statistics, it looks like it's going to be pretty safe all around up there, for any person that's working on the roof, even though we have to warn them and tell them it's there. So overall, I'm in agreement that it's a, good thing to have. It's going to look really nice and serve a purpose, so I don't have any objections to it.
Thank you very much for that. And yeah, I also would agree with all my colleagues here on the overall project. I appreciate Mr. McLaren's clarifications on what is going to take place in terms of ensuring and safeguarding the occupants of the building and what they're planning to measure once this project is complete. And I definitely think it is going to be a noticeable thing, even though we're just talking about 8 feet of extension. It will definitely be visible, noticeable, and I think that it's been designed to blend in and be consistent with the existing building, as reported in our Ark Review. And I know there is always been concern out there in terms of cell towers all around us, which are sort of ubiquitous now with the numbers that are out there. And but we do know and understand, and there has not been any significant or any evidence to show any sort of issues especially down on ground level. And in this instance, all of the reports seems to demonstrate that. And I feel that as far as the necessity, the why that's been presented, I appreciate that as well by the applicant and our staff. And thanks for putting this together. So with that, if we can go ahead and move to the resolution reading.
Yes, resolution number PC 2022-06, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving a request for a conditional use permit for AT&T Mobility for the construction of a 55-foot stealth wireless communications facility located at 2301 East Daly Drive in the professional office zone, the PO zone, further described as CUP 410.
Okay, can I have a motion for resolution adoption?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution and waive further reading, and I think that's all I need to say.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'll
It's
second.
been moved by Commissioner Talmadge and seconded by Commissioner Murphy. No further comment, we can go ahead and vote. Passes 4-0 unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you to the applicant and to staff. Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to Director's Report.
No report tonight.
Okay, no report from directors. Any commissioner comments? Seeing none. With that, we will adjourn the meeting.